This is left side of the brain. Go ahead, hit the likes button, hit the subscribe button, because tonight I have a very special treat. I promised that I would do a series on the elements. Well, here it is. As I promised, we're about to get into it. Do me a favor, clear your mind of all the misinformation that you heard today, whether on YouTube, through people that you've been speaking to today. Go ahead, clear your mind, flush your mind of all of that nonsense that doesn't belong in your mind. Because right now, you are tuned in to the realest hour, the darkest hour, the hour of power. You know it, the red light edition. And you already know how the red light editions go. So buckle your seatbelts, take your pillows out, clear your earwax, clear your mind. And without further ado, let's get into it. Now, I promised to do this series, and at first I was going to do each element individually, but then I thought about it and I said to myself that I would condense all of the elements in one series. I don't know, this series may be 2 parts, it's set the spirit's lead. So we're going to let the spirit guide us. So clear your hearts, clear your minds, and let's get started. Jaguars up, antennas up, let's go. Now, the elements, you have earth, you have air, you have water, and you have fire. These are the elements that we are dealing with tonight. Now let's start from the time of the great falling away. Now, mind you, in this series, you have to have a little bit of information on the channel as far as the terminology and some of the things that we speak about. I will not be addressing those things in this video. So if you don't know, feel free to ask one of your fellow Jaguars in the comment section. I'm not going to answer every comment. Ask Jaguars, other Jaguars who've been listening, whoever I'm speaking to as a Jaguar, if you want to take on that position to answer questions in the comment section, feel free to do that. I will answer some questions, but some of you Jaguars, it's time to step up and start taking that lead role position and addressing some of these things as well. But let's get into it. Now, we have spoke about darkness before. Okay? We spoke about the time before now that we call the great falling away. The time before the great falling away. The time that we live in now is post great falling away. What we call the now. Everything past, present, future, dealing with time is post great falling away. So make that mental note. Now, before the great falling away, the only thing that existed was darkness. Now, during this time of darkness, there was no such thing as ego. There was no such thing as egotism, no such thing as being egotistical. It was just darkness. Even before words were even formed to give darkness a name, it was just a state of absolute silence. It was called the state of darkness before the great falling away. Now, during this time, as I said, ego did not exist. Now, let me give you an example. When you was in your mother's womb, you were not aware of your body because you didn't have an ego in your mother's womb. And you was in complete darkness. You had no concept of time. You had no concept of self. You had no concept of anything except peace. Even before you could even call peace, peace, that's what it was. Even before you could call darkness, darkness, that's what it was. It was that time of no ego. So put that in your notes as well. This was before ego, EGO. All of this was before the great falling away. This was the dark state. Okay? No ego. And during this time, that's where the first element lived. Space consisted of darkness and air. Okay, this is your first element, the darkness and the air. Now, during this time, and I like to say, during this time of darkness, light did not exist yet. Not light as we know it. You see, the light that you see, like the light during the day, the reason for that light is because after the time of the great falling away, man had to deal with obstacles. You see, light, which occurred after the time of the great falling away, light and ego go hand in hand. Like you look at yourself in the mirror. You need to see yourself. A female, she's in front of the mirror. She puts makeup on her face. She needs light to highlight certain flaws that she sees in herself, or to highlight the beauty that she sees in her face. Or a man who goes to the gym, he's working out. He needs light to stand in front of the mirror, to flex his muscles, to show him his flaws, and to highlight his best features. You see? So light existed after the darkness because light came about as a result of the ego state that we live in now. Remember, when you was in your mother's womb, you had no reason to look at yourself in the mirror. You wasn't concerned about egotism. None of that. Your consciousness was still connected to the time before the great falling away. This is when you was in your mother's womb before the programming set in. Now, your physical body was connected to the umbilical cord. Your physical body was in the fallen state during this time in your mother's womb. But there was a time in your mother's womb when you were still in the state before the great falling away, in complete darkness, when you had no ego. Now, when you were birthed into this world, that's the first time you saw light, physical light. And I'm not speaking of light in a metaphorical sense, like light as in truth. I'm talking about physical lights, like when you turn the light on in your room. That's the first time you saw that light. That light relates to ego. It also relates to the illusion world that we live in. Lights create shadows. Lights bend. Lights create optical illusions. Okay? And thinking about obstacles, this world is an obstacle course. So lights were created because the ego is necessary, or I won't use the word necessary. The ego is a part of the world of danger. Whenever you're around a lot of people with a whole lot of different egos, that's where danger comes from. Ego is the adversary of peace. Okay? In a sense. So when you came into this world of light, after the darkness, that's because in this world, you had an ego and you needed to see yourself. And because it was the first time that you were in a physical body, you needed to watch where you was going. Some of this is going to be deep. Some of this is just going to be straight up common sense. You needed light. So if you're walking from point A to point B, you would be able to see any obstacles in your pathway that you could trip over, stumble over, and your eyes scan your perimeters because you had to absorb everything around you. And as you grew up, everything that you absorbed, at first you didn't know what it was. But slowly but surely, everything started to make sense in the world around you. When you first saw, everything was just like a myriad of colors moving around. When a baby first opens up its eyes, it notices just blurred images. And that's why your brain doesn't remember any of these things, because the programming hadn't set in yet, right? So fast forward, you grow up, you in a world surrounded by human prison bars. I just had to say all of that to show you the reason for light versus darkness. Light, ego, darkness without the ego. Now let's go back to the time before the great falling away. I had to do that. I had to go forward. Now we got to go back reverse. Let's go back to the time before the great falling away. Now, let's get into the element of air. Within this darkness, the first element, boy, I need some water. The first element was air in the space of darkness. Why am I saying this? Okay, when you read the Bible, when you go to the book of Genesis, it tells you everything except God saying, "Let there be darkness." And it tells you everything except God saying, "Let there be air." Have you noticed that? It tells you everything else God saying, let there be trees. God saying, let there be man. God saying, let there be green grass. All of these other things. But the darkness, it never said, let there be darkness. And it never said, let there be air. What is that telling you? The darkness is the non-ego state that existed. And the air that we breathe is the connection to that state. You might say, what do you mean it's the connection to that state? The air that you breathe is the umbilical cord to the darkness, because air is a conduit of consciousness. Without air, you black out. You're not conscious. Air is what gives the living soul the consciousness that it has. Your brain would just go dead without air. So air is the umbilical cord to the darkness. Even before you are in the body, that air has always existed. Without air, there is nothing. That's the first element. That's the spirit. Okay? Now, let's get deeper. Water represents fallen air. Water represents the fallen state. When you see it rain, that represents the time of the great falling away. Notice, it's billions of people. It's going to make sense. And when it rains, it's billions of water drops. Each one of those water drops, it represents a soul. Because water is nothing but condensed air. It falls. It's a lot packed in this. I'm not going to rush through this. Each one of those water drops represents a soul. Right? And what does water do? When it hits the ground, when it goes into the lakes, when it goes into the rivers, when it goes into the streams, it evaporates. It goes through a process called what? Condensation. Water evaporates, and we have what? The water cycle. What am I getting at? What does this sound like? What did I just say? Each one of those drops represents a soul. They fall to earth. And then what? That water evaporates, goes back into the clouds, and it rains down again. What is that? That is reincarnation. Representing the reincarnation of the billions of souls on this earth who reincarnate just like the water drops, which was once what? Which was once air. Until it formed into a condensed state of heavier air, gases merging. Male and female gases create water. That hydrogen that they speak about and that two oxygens, those two oxygens, one of those oxygens is a male. One of those oxygens is a female. And a hydrogen is just the glue that brings those two oxygens together. You can say the magnetic attraction. That's what the hydrogen represents. It's a magnetic attraction. Or like you see a woman and you feel that magnetic attraction between you and her. and you and her come together and you have a child, that's what the H2O represents. It's deep science in this. So this water rains down, right? And while we on this topic of water, people they take water for granted. This is just a random thought, but it's still in line with what we're speaking about. Let's just say, for example, if Christmas came around and I gave you a bottle of water, or Valentine's Day came around and I gave the girl that I was dating a bottle of water. She would look at me and say, "This cheap bastard, he's giving me a bottle of water." Or if you gave your child a bottle of water for Christmas, "Mom, all you got me is some water." Not realizing that water is life. What greater gift can you give someone than a bottle of water? The truth. But see, because we live in a world of materialism and egotism, we forget the essence of life. Just like what I'm telling you right now, going back to the essence of everything. And I'm just kind of getting off subject, just using this water thing because the spirit gave it to me and I had to do this. Since we're talking about the elements, water is truth, water is life. So if someone would give somebody a water bottle as a gift, somebody would say, "Oh, that's so cheap. Only thing you can get me some water," because they don't understand that water is the essence of life, not something materialistic, not a gold chain, but water. Now, while we on water, now let's talk about it for what it is. Water. So we spoke about air. Air in the fallen state is water. The many droplets represents the many souls. Okay? Water represents truth. Water represents life. Something that you can't live without. Okay? And water comes in different forms: liquid, solid, gas. And those three stages of water, liquid, solid, and gas, it's basically a trinity, which tells you about the whole process of everything from the fallen state. No, before the fallen state, to the fallen state, to the state of being in a body. Check it out. When an ice cube evaporates, it goes back to what? The gaseous state of darkness. Before that was solid, before that was liquid. When it melts, when you melt an ice cube, it goes into the liquid state. You boil it, you boil the water, the melted water, it goes into the gaseous state. So it's so much truth in a cube of ice. You see the whole process of everything. You even get to see the light through the water. The ego is in the water. The reflection that we spoke about. Just looking at your reflection off the lake, you even see where the ego came from by beholding your image. Light gave life to sin. There can be no vanity without light. Light, vanity, ego, it all goes together. You can't be vain and have vanity without light and darkness. How can someone say, I look better than you in the pitch black dark? Light gave birth to vanity. Light gave birth to lust. How can you lust after something if you can't see it? Light gave birth to coveting something that someone else has. How can you covet something that someone else has if you can't see it? Light gave birth to stealing. How can you want to steal something from someone if you can't see it? You need light to see it. Light gave birth to sin. Darkness is where the respect is. Darkness is fear. Everybody has a natural fear or respect for darkness. You cut the lights out, people instantly freeze because they respect the fact that they are in a dark room, the presence of it itself. If you're not connected to it, it can send chills up your spine. You know where fear comes from? Fear comes from you as an individual having a lot of things in your life that you haven't dealt with. Fear it comes from you fearing some type of karma that's out to get you for something that you did somewhere in your life. So you fear when the lights are out. You fear darkness because you fear something that you did inside of yourself. You fear judgment. You fear some type of retaliation from something in the dark. You panic. For what? That's why if you put a baby in a dark room, it doesn't cry because it's in the dark. Only after it reaches a certain age, when it has come into understanding of things around it, far as what the light has shown it, far as vanity. And, babies can start to get selfish at a certain age. Then when the lights are turned off, they feel this fear because the baby has taken something that the mother told it not to take. It has partook in something that it wasn't supposed to partake in, or it saw something on TV that it shouldn't have seen. So when the lights are turned off, all of these things starts to play back in the child's mind. All of the evil that you have thought about doing to somebody, when the lights are out, you think about something that you thought about doing to somebody happening to you. You feel vulnerable in the dark because you have unresolved issues in your life. So you fear the darkness. And that's why even since I've been talking about darkness, it's been people in the comments section saying things like, this sounds satanic, or because they don't understand. And what you don't understand, you fear. That's why I'm doing this series right here, so you will understand the elements. You will understand the darkness, so you won't have anything to fear. Fear is just based in not understanding. Fear is based in light. You can't fear something if you've never seen anything to fear in the first place. You can't fear anything if you haven't heard anything to fear in the first place. That's why they say fear means false evidence appearing real. This is an illusion. False evidence appearing real. Once you realize that everything in the light is an illusion, you have nothing to fear in the first place. This is part 1 of this series. I'm going to do part 2. This is Left Side of the Brain. Tune in to part 2 coming up.